Welcome to this Illustrator tutorial where we'll be using Illustrator basic tools to create a chocolate font. Some of the tools we're going to be dealing with are the pathfinder, pen tool, transparencies, grouping of objects, expanding, and other such tools. So first thing we do is open Illustrator and start a new file. Call that chocolate font. A3 landscape, click OK. Then we initiate our type tool in order to create a text box, and let's type the word cool. Then we'll choose our font and size the text accordingly. So we change the size, 72. See, that's not big enough. Increase the size, maybe increase it one more time. Cool. So now that we have that, we'll go object, expand, in order to make that editable. From that point on, we can resize it and place the letters how we want. Using the direct select tool, we can move each letter individually and resize them if we need to. As you can see here, maybe change the size of the two O's to give the text a better feeling. We can move the L out, maybe tilt it a tiny bit. After we've done that, once we finished, we'll use the effects tool to round the corner. So we select all of it and group it together, Control G. Then we go Effects, Stylize, and click Round Corners. We can increase the round corners to 20 points with the preview on. Should give us our desired effect so that the text isn't so sharp. Now, moving on, we're going to use our tools such as the ellipse and rectangle tool to create a droplet. First we do the rectangular tool, then we will use the ellipse. After we've done that, we can zoom in and use the direct select tool and work our way into making these two shapes into a droplet. We can change the anchor points to make it more smooth and basically just work with the image in order to create a desired effect. Then once that's done, once we've got the right shape, we will then want to join these two shapes together. So we'll use the pathfinder tool on our right with the two overlapping squares. Click on that and then click on Unity to make these into one shape. We'll do that now after just doing some final touch-ups. Now we've selected both layers and we'll use the Unity tool. We will then transform the size, and then using the Alt key we can duplicate our shape and place it on each letter accordingly, and then transform. Remember to always hold Shift when transforming your shape in order not to warp it. We'll make one more here, put it on the corner of the L, maybe adjust the size a little. So now we go down to the pathfinder, as you can see there, and we unify the whole image. Now our drops and our text are in one image. We're then going to use our pen tool to create a melt-in effect and apply that to our letters. So we use the pen tool here, create a straight line, and then slowly, by clicking and dragging in order to curve the anchor, we can create a sort of melting effect, as you see there, with each little droplet basically looking as if it would be melting off to get that chocolate effect. Just do some work, round out all the corners, just to give it a more natural shape. We just need to work it a bit until we're happy with it. And this can be done by just playing around and dragging and clicking on anchor points. Once we're done our shape, as you can see from zooming out, we'll position it how we want and then use the Alt tool to duplicate onto other letters and then transform each size accordingly to the letter. So just place it there, zoom in, see what we have to do, try maybe round the corners a little. By lifting those 2 points up there, no white gaps will be seen between the two shapes, and then we place it to get a desired effect. Once we've done that, we can then duplicate that shape into all the other letters and then place them in order to make it look as if our text is melting. This effect works quite well, yet is very simple. Now that we have all the shapes, we can just use the direct select tool to change a few of the anchor points to make it fit our photo just a bit better, by dragging some of those out to the side and then transforming the size of this shape in order just to fit on the bottom of the L there. Go to our direct tool and just bring that corner in a tiny bit to make sure it doesn't overlap with our shape. Now if we zoom out, you can see we have a really effective melting technique used on our original font. Then we can take all of that, unify it together, and now it becomes one shape. Now that we have the look that we want on our font, we can start thinking about colors. So if we select everything and go up to the gradient tool, we can start playing around with that. So we double click there and we select two of the colors we want, that's being black and brown, and then we decide what angle we want it at. So we want the brown at the top and the dark at the bottom. So once we've done that, we sort of just make sure all our settings are okay. We can play around with the angle a bit to see the most effective thing. If we don't like that, we can change our gradient by just swapping the two palettes, and there you have it. We have the dark on the top going lighter to the bottom. Now for the next thing, we are going to do a similar technique using our pen tool like we did for the melting effect, but sort of an inverse. So we're going to create a sort of wave pattern where the crests are essentially meeting at the top of each of the letters. So we'll take our pen tool there, ignore the middle color, we'll change that later, and then using the pen tool, as you can see, just ensuring that the crest of the shape, each one basically hits the peak at the middle of each letter. using the same techniques by just clicking or clicking and dragging to round out some of the shapes. And then close the shape. Now we'll basically just change some of the anchor points using the top left hand button over there. The one at the angle changes it to an angular point, whereas in the round one gives you the ability to round that point. Once we've done that, we make it orange and select it. We're then gonna use we're going to duplicate that layer and then use this font basically, and just ensure that the shape is in the front of the text and not behind it. And then after that we will play with the transparency. So now we move the shape into position, how we would want the colors to overlap the chocolate effect, like so. Then we can select everything. And once we've selected everything and make sure everything's in position, we'll make a duplicate layer of the font that we previously made. Then we'll use a pathfinding tool to cut out the front shape of the orange to overlap the text. We first though need to make sure that the orange block covers all of the bottom text there, so we'll just drag our two anchor points down and then use the pathfinder tool to minus from the front. Remember to hold Alt when clicking the button in order to get the desired effect. Now we position our chocolate font back into its original position to overlap with the orange shape. Once we're happy with that, we can just move it around a bit and make sure all the corners line up and everything is in its correct place. We can use our direct select tool in order to shape this just a little bit better so it fits in with the shape of the melting, and you'll see why we're trying to achieve this effect later on in the tutorial. So we just move around, adjust all the points and corners as necessary. Sorry about the video quality, unfortunately that stuff happens. So now that we're happy with our orange shape, we'll select it, go to the Windows tool, go down to find our transparency tool, and then we will change the transparency. So we'll select the blending mask, take it from normal and make it overlay, and then we will toggle the opacity, which basically decides on how see-through the shape is. And as you can see, it's given us quite a good effect with the overlay on the brown. Once we've done that, we'll now use our ellipse tool to create a shape and our rectangular tool. What we're basically going to do here is lay the rectangle over the ellipse and use a pathfinder to minus the two shapes, giving us that desired semi-circle at the bottom, like that. We'll take that, we will change that color to white. We will then go to the Windows tool, select our brushes, and then from there make a new brush. So there we go, select brushes, use the new brush tool in the bottom right hand corner. Sorry. There we go. Click there and we'll click art brush and then we'll click OK. This allows us to use this white semicircle effect as a brush for later on. Basically, we can just label it cool and continue. We can then delete that shape as it's now stored in our brush library. From there, we'll use that brush in our brush tool, select on that and use it to create a sort of glare on our chocolate font. And as you can see, it gives us a really nice effect with one side rounded and the other more flat. Now I've made this brush with the stroke on, but for future uses you don't always need a stroke and it would be more effective to use the full color. But as we can see, this is working quite nicely here, so we'll just continue. So once we've created those shapes, you can see it gives our chocolate a more shiny appearance, as if the light is coming off the top there. Now we'll just be putting a few glances of light on the droplets here to give them more shape and make them more 3D, because at the moment they've got a very 2D appearance. So we just need to make sure we've got the right settings on for our brush. And just get the right shape, and then as we can see, this shape is a bit thick for such a small area, but no worries. So we'll just quickly first zoom in and then draw our shapes in, and then come back later and edit those white shapes. We can adjust the brush size using the square brackets. As we can see, the blob brush isn't our desired appeal, so we'll use the brush we made earlier on, move it into position, and then basically use our effect and remove the stroke to get the desired effect for the bottom of these droplets. As you can see, a nice semicircle shape there, and we can use the brush in the same way that we've just been doing it, ensure we've got the right color, and just position and resize accordingly. So now if we zoom out, it gives our droplets a more 3D effect, which is lovely, as you can see. Now we can just zoom in, add a bit more effect. We can select our normal brush and just accompany our previous shape with something a little bit smaller, like 2 dots. It just gives us a more realistic effect on the font. And then once we've done that, we can group those two shapes using Ctrl G and then hold Alt to duplicate them, and then size them and place them accordingly on all the other shapes. And we just drag it again. There we go. And then just make one little dot there on the L. Doesn't have to be like all the others. And as you can see, that's given our font a very 3D effect, and created some good depth. Now we're gonna select everything and just group it together. Not using the pathfinder, that doesn't seem to be working, so we can't unify it, so we'll just Ctrl G, which is essentially as effective. So now we're going to use our rectangle tool to create a backdrop. We can select a color that will go quite nicely, right click, transform, send it to the back in order to put it behind our font. And now we use our ellipse tool and we can draw a ellipse the size of our font, make it black. This is going to be used as our drop shadow. So we'll place it there, make it look like our font is floating, and then we will use the transparency layer, click multiply, and we can play with opacity, just play around there, and let's put on very light, so maybe 20%, maybe a bit less. And these sort of settings you can play around with, but essentially here you have it, our chocolate font, using all the required pen tools, pathfinders, brush creation and gradients to create such an effect. Thank you so much, and tune in next time for our next Illustrator tutorial. Thank you.